Cheaters, how did your affair start and end? Story 1. I was young, 19, and I had been with a girl for a year when my parents decided I needed to pay rent. So I found a roommate and got an apartment. On the first day, I got to the office to turn in my walkthrough paperwork. The girl in the office made my heart skip when she made me a believer in the idea of love at first sight. She moved in across from my apartment a couple of weeks later and we started to hang out. One night we slept together and the next day I broke up with my girlfriend. I and the new girl talked and we both wanted to be together. So she moved in with me a month later. That was 17 years ago. She's currently asleep downstairs next to our daughter. Reply 1. I give this guy props. At least he ended it right away afterward. I was cheated on twice. They were by 2 different people in less than a month. I found out through a friend and then I also found out about another time through a random stranger who was at a party and saw the cheating occur. I don't know who that person was or how they got my number, but damn, I'm grateful for them. Edit. I've been in a great relationship since then, so everything worked out in the end, thankfully. Story 2. Was in a 5-year-long relationship with my girlfriend at the time. I started to talk to an old coworker from my teens that I always had a thing for, but she lived a couple of states away, so I knew nothing would come out of it. Well, it turns out that she still had family in the area and regularly visited. We made plans to get some dinner and catch up for old time's sake. It ended in both of us getting drunk, renting a hotel room, and having some fun. This happened a few times over the next several months until I got a text from her. It's a picture of a sonogram of our child. I was going to come clean to my girlfriend because I never had a father growing up, and I didn't want to put my child through that. However, she ended up losing it a month or so into the pregnancy, and we stopped talking. It left me feeling very guilty and anxiety-stricken. 0 out of 10 would not do it again. Edit. No, I never told her. We broke up a few months later for unrelated problems in the relationship and we're not still together. Story 3. I've been married for 4 years and never considered anyone but my husband since I'm totally devoted and in love. A year ago, we both went out with some mutual friends. The night went on and he got tired but said I should stay since I never really go out. I was excited to be outside of my comfort zone and drank too much. I blacked out and woke up without any clothes in a bed with an acquaintance who is infamous for partying. When I woke up, I had 20 missed calls from my husband and the girl's spouse was fondling me. I went home and told my husband, but it was hard because I couldn't remember more than a few seconds of what had happened the night before and had a vague sense that it was all a nightmare. I felt like I don't even know myself and I had never wanted anything like that to happen. I wasn't attracted to either of those people and I'm not a flirtatious person. I hate being touched and I consider my husband to be the best thing in my life. Either way, he was not angry with me, but I felt I couldn't live with what I did. Few weeks after the incident, we moved from New York back to our home state of Nevada. Things seem normal now, but I still consider that night the worst of my life. Story 4. I was the mistress in a marriage. The guy was an old boyfriend from high school. We dated off and on. When we were off, he would date this girl named Kelly. And when we broke up for the final time, he went and married her. Almost a year after we broke up, I was back in town on summer break from college and ran into him at my summer job. He gave me this sob story about how Kelly wanted a divorce and was taking his kids away from him. I stupidly believed him. We exchanged numbers and started talking daily. He invited me over to his apartment, showed me his divorce paperwork, and ultimately things got sexual for a couple of weeks. One day I swung by to pick up a pair of earrings I'd forgotten the day before. His best friend from high school answered the door. I asked if the guy was around and my best friend said no. Why would he? Turns out the guy was actually house sitting for best friend. It wasn't his apartment. Best friend also informed me that the guy and Kelly were in the process of buying a house and their marriage was fine. I was livid and disgusted. So I once went to work the following day and walked Kelly to ask her what she was doing later that night and if she was available to talk. We meet up after I get off and I lay it out for her. She teared up a bit, but ultimately she was pissed. She gives me their address and tells me to show up there unannounced the next day. I do, and the guy is white as a sheet, trying to get me to leave. In a few minutes, Kelly shows up and they end up in a screaming match. So the guy ended up getting divorced and settled with a chunk of child support because Kelly informed the right people about the guy's pot plants. None of us talk anymore, and when I think about it, I have to shower at least twice. Whoa, that must have been super intense for you. You handled it really well though, I think. Many girls out there wouldn't have been brave enough to inform the wife. Story 5. A few years ago, I met this amazing guy. Let's call him Guy A. I fell very much in love with him. He was so kind and sweet. We kissed a few times and hooked up once, but he was starting to see this other girl, so it never went further than that. I was pretty heartbroken over it. Fast forward a few years. I'm a year and a half into this horrible relationship. We'll call him Head. He is a compulsive liar, yells at me, and threatens to break up every time I do something he doesn't like. Like whenever I had a panic attack. I'm at a concert without Head, and I look across the dance floor and I see Guy A dancing his heart out, laughing and just being amazing. Hadn't seen him since the time we hooked up, which was a few years ago. My heart skipped a beat. I approached him, we talked for hours, and I told him I was living with a really guy and that I wanted out. When he kissed me goodbye, I just knew he was the one. I continued the relationship with my for about a week while still seeing the other guy on the side before I finally worked up the courage to break up with him. I've been with Guy A ever since and haven't looked back once. Story 6. I'm gay and I was seeing a guy. Let's call him A. Nothing crazy serious, but headed in that direction. He was at a college pretty far away but was from my area. Started talking to a guy, let's call him B, I had a class with whom I was pretty attracted. We start talking. Turns out B has been seeing A for the last year or so too, and they actually got arrested together fairly recently. B and I got along really well and started seeing each other. B stopped seeing A, but I was still talking to him. It all ended when A was in town and came over one night and saw a text from B show up on my phone that was sitting on the table. He didn't know we knew each other and he definitely didn't know we were hooking up. He wasn't happy and we broke up. B and I had a short summer affair and realized neither of us wanted a relationship. We're now best friends and there's nobody I trust more in the world. I moved across the country and we still talk all the time and go to music festivals together. A occasionally snaps me pics of his tool when it's soft, so not sure what that's about. I've never gotten around to asking. I think it's great that you and B were able to form such a strong friendship after everything that happened. It's not every day that you find someone who can trust and connect with you so deeply. As for A, it's a bit odd that he still sends those kinds of pictures, but I guess people deal with things differently. I'm glad you were able to move on and find happiness in your friendship with B. Story 7. He cheated on me. Things weren't going great, so I decided to go cheat as well. It took no time before we opened the relationship, and things have been better in terms of that sense. Story 8. She'd been my boss at my high school job. I reconnected with her in my early 30s and decided to make a move. I wasn't the cheater. She was, but she was married. Story 9. Was living with my girlfriend at uni. Towards the end of my degree, I had a field trip abroad, and a good friend and I realized we maybe would have liked to be more than that. Got home and said to my girlfriend that I wasn't sure things were working and that I needed some time. We had our finals to do, and I didn't want to screw those up for her, so I didn't dump her outright. Meanwhile, the other girl and I got closer and a few things happened. Eventually, after our exams were done, I broke up with my girlfriend, adamantly denying there was someone else. Now, 12 years later, I and the other girl have been married for 5 years, and my ex is married to a woman. Story 10. My ex-husband and I weren't even sleeping in the same room when I met my affair. Ex just wasn't interested in and it was causing so many fights because I was so unsatisfied. I met my affair on World of Warcraft, and we knew each other for about a year and had never flirted or anything like that. One day, I found out that she had Settlers of Catan and mozzarella sticks and lived an hour and a half away. I hopped in the car and drove down, and we hit it off really well. He didn't know I was married at the time. I really needed to get since it had been about 6 months at least. The affair never ended, or I guess it officially ended when my divorce was finalized. He and I are married now and have been together for 6 years. Story 11. I was 40, had been married for 10 plus years, and had a couple of kids. Our marriage had turned into something that made me really unhappy. We barely had sex, and our connection seemed completely gone. We fought a lot, and it was always me who needed to apologize and compromise. I met a woman 15 years younger at the office. We started flirting, and it turned into an intense emotional affair that lasted about a month. I fell deeply in love with her and decided I should really divorce my wife since I was so unhappy. I told my wife about the other woman and that I wanted a divorce. My wife begged me to try and work it out, got into couples counseling, and started having with me every day. I stayed and agreed to take 3 months to see if we could work it out, which was incredibly hard, but we eventually did feel like we overcame it, and we're still together. Story 12. Well, I was young and stupid, and I was in a relationship where neither of us was happy, but we were too attached or afraid to end it. He was working insane hours, so we never saw each other, and I just didn't care for him anymore, but I didn't realize it until I met a friend of my roommates. We'll call him Jim. He swept me off my feet and made me feel special in a way that I hadn't felt in years. He put it in my head that my ex-significant other didn't love me or care about me, and that I deserve better, etc. Eventually, this all led to this weird pseudo-relationship. We talked constantly but never hooked up. One night, after a bad fight with my boyfriend, I fled to Jim's house for comfort. That night, our physical relationship began. Jim made me feel wanted, and he made me smile and laugh, and I enjoyed spending time with him. It was a fun little secret at first, but I knew that what I was doing was wrong, and I couldn't handle the guilt anymore. I finally ended things with my boyfriend, and that is when Jim completely ghosted me. It hurt worse than the breakup. My support system and motivation to leave my boyfriend of 3 years were gone because apparently it got too real. I was naive and young and vulnerable. Jim came into my life when I was heading toward the end of my first serious relationship, and I was very lonely. I hate myself for what I did until I learned that my significant other had been cheating on me for the entirety of our relationship and was waiting for me to leave so he could be with her. So I guess it all worked out? Reply 1. I've met a number of people over the years that are only attracted to people as long as they think they have something special with someone who should be unattainable to them. The minute they can have someone all to themselves, the attraction vanishes. Number 13. I was the other guy in a 2+ year-long affair where she was married and still is. No happy ending for me, at least. Former work associates, we'd hung out a few times and just watched TV or movies. Smoked and drank, but nothing happened for a long time. I had an emotional and physical attraction to her, and the feeling was mutual, but we never crossed a line. One time at a party, she got too drunk, and since I was her ride, we both stayed there in a spare bed together. Honestly, I wanted the intimacy of being close to somebody, and I wanted to make sure she didn't get sick in her sleep. I didn't do anything, and neither did she. However, nothing happened that night. We hung out a week or so later, and she said she had liked my beard rubbing against her, and then asked me to do it again. This progressed over days to more intimately cuddling, grinding, groping, and finally, I kissed her. It was awesome. Making out progressed to oral, and she really wanted to have sex one night. I declined at first, really, but we had sex. Then again and again. She explained some time after this that at the beginning she was feeling distant from her husband. He was pushing her to have kids and, according to her, being a I wasn't that guy. It ended fairly recently because she was trying to distance herself from me and kept saying that, to the point I just said f it and gave up. It ended up in a minor argument and she asked if I wanted to break up. I said I wasn't certain, so she dumped me instead. By the way, it started out with a little bit of intimacy and ended when I got so frustrated at her, and vice versa, I guess. It sounds like you both found comfort and connection with each other during a difficult time in her marriage, but ultimately, it's tough to build a stable relationship on such shaky foundations. While the attraction and excitement might have been there, it's important to consider the long-term consequences of these decisions. It's unfortunate that things ended on a sour note for you, but I hope you can learn from this experience and focus on finding a more fulfilling and healthy relationship in the future. Story 14. I cheated on 3 different occasions while I was with my SO. When I mean 3 different occasions, I mean I had sex with another girl 3 different times. It started with my not being satisfied with my SO at the time. I started drinking to cope with our relationship. Drinking made me lose a lot of my ability to care or think rationally. I hit up a girl I used to know to sleep with her. We talked back and forth, met up 3 times, and that was that. My SO at the time never found out, and I never told her. Mine was not very scandalous, but I can tell you it's the only thing in my life I regret doing. It's a weak and cowardly move to make. Story 15. It all started and ended in my ex-wife's head. She still divorced me. Story 16. I lost count since I had cheated in all my monogamous relationships for over 11 years, until I took a hard look at my life and decided I'd rather be in an open relationship where both partners can fuck other people and no cheating is necessary. Best decision of my life. Story 17. I haven't cheated per se, but what I did was still messed up. I was the guy a girl cheated with. I'll preface the story by saying I was going through the beginning of a minor mental breakdown, so morals weren't exactly on my mind. It started out by meeting her in my apartment building randomly. There was pretty fast chemistry and she was super cute. Still miss her to this day. The weekend was a men's soccer game at my college and my roommate was talking to her about her life while I was talking to another friend. We found out she had a boyfriend and she told him it was about to end, but he had back surgery recently and she didn't want to dump him in a hospital bed. Jump to that night and 4 of us are in our apartment just chilling. My roommate and another friend are talking about going out, but I was feeling this situation out. He left and it's just me and her. We get to talking and flirting and I bring up her boyfriend. She says, "Oh, it's a bad relationship. It'll be over in a month, a week, a day." After she said a day, I was thinking, this is happening. I started playing my keyboard in order to cut the tension, which just grew as she sat on the couch watching. She clearly wasn't going to initiate and was silent even as I approached her, just staring at me. But I just went for it, and within an hour she had her legs wrapped around me in my bed. So there's that. And one time she passed out after showering while still standing and fell out. I thought I'd had to explain that for her parents and boyfriend in a hospital. That was scary. It lasted 4 months until she was so stressed from cheating that her face broke out with acne, and I cut it off because my mental health was getting better. I realized it was messed up and had to set my feelings aside and do the right thing. Still miss being with her, although I now realize we aren't all that compatible, and I also liked the consistency. Story 18. I was in a dud of a marriage. I married too young and against my better judgment. My husband was a controlling and repressed man who did not respect me, and I did not respect him. I found out that my husband was on dating sites and talking to women online, attempting to solicit dates. He was actively seeking to cheat, and the only thing stopping him from taking it to a physical realm was the fact that none of the women were interested in him. We worked in our marriage over the years to try to resolve this online cheating, but he'd always start up again. Eventually, I got so emotionally worn out by it that I just didn't have it in me to care anymore. I met a man at work who I was instantly attracted to on a mental and a physical level, something I'd never had with my husband. We started out with harmless conversations and became work friends. We then found excuses to text each other when not at work. We'd grab lunch together here and there, at first with groups and then with just the 2 of us. I couldn't wait to go to work every day and see him. I thought about him all the time. I knew I was heading towards dangerous ground, but I didn't want to stop. We started flirting and I began to sneak away from home to meet up with him for hikes, dinner, you name it. I met up with him for hours at a time on evenings and weekends. And my husband never really noticed because his attention was always occupied with his friends or his online chats with women. My friend from work and I were always careful not to make physical contact, until one day in his car when he leaned over to help me with my jammed seatbelt and he kissed me. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever felt in my life. Over the next few weeks, meeting up to have dinner turned into meeting up to find a secluded spot and make out in his car. Then that eventually turned into groping, handjobs, etc. You get the idea. I could not get enough of this guy. I felt tremendously guilty the entire time because I never thought of myself as the type who would cheat. I came clean with my husband before my affair progressed any deeper. I broke off the affair and agreed to try marriage counseling. I quickly changed my mind when during the course of an argument, I didn't want to go to his church and he wanted me to. My husband slapped me and told me I wasn't allowed to have any unsupervised visits with my family or friends anymore. After I told my husband I wanted a divorce, he attempted to destroy my life. He tried to get me fired, told all the neighbors and everyone at his church what happened, posted our business on Facebook, tagging my friends and family, you name it. He also threatened to beat up the guy I had been cheating with, which, honestly, would have only ended in severe embarrassment and injury for himself. It didn't take long after filing divorce papers for me to hook back up with my friend and officially start dating him. My husband harassed and threatened us both until my boyfriend called his bluff, and then he just sort of faded away. My boyfriend is now my husband, and we have been together for 10 years and going strong. I love him more than anything, and I respect him more than anyone I've ever met. I would never dream of cheating on him, and I feel confident that he'd never cheat on me.
Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.